You are standing on a subway platform. It is 8:47 in the morning. The platform is packed. Suits, backpacks, headphones, coffee cups. Then something happens. A man at the far end stumbles, falls, doesn't get up. You see it. 20 other people see it. And for a moment, maybe 3 seconds, maybe 5, nobody moves. You look to your left, you look to your right. You think, someone else will handle this, someone more qualified, someone closer, someone who isn't as unsure as you feel right now. And so you wait, and so does everyone else. That moment has a name. It is one of the most studied, most replicated, and most unsettling discoveries in the history of social psychology. And the real explanation for why it happens is far stranger and far more disturbing than simply saying people don't care. Because they do care. You care. What you are is not indifferent. What you are is human. And being human, it turns out, comes with a specific and predictable failure mode built right into your social brain whenever other people are nearby. It started with a murder. March 13, 1964, Queens, New York. A 28-year-old woman named Kitty Genovese was stabbed outside her apartment building just after 3 in the morning. The attack lasted over 30 minutes. Her killer left and came back. And the story that spread through every newspaper, every psychology textbook, and every dinner table conversation for the next 50 years was this. 38 witnesses saw or heard the attack. Not one of them called the police until it was too late. That number, 38, became a symbol of apathy, of modern coldness, of a civilization so self-absorbed it could watch a woman die and do nothing. 2 psychologists at Columbia University read that headline and had a different reaction. They didn't ask, what is wrong with those 38 people? They asked, is this actually what humans do? And if so, is it a character flaw or something else entirely? Their names were John Darley and Bibb, and what they discovered would become one of the most replicated findings in the entire history of behavioral science. In 1968, Darley and Latané brought participants into a building and told them they would be taking part in a group discussion about life in a college environment. Each participant would speak into a microphone, alone in their cubicle, while the others listened on a rotation. Only one microphone would be live at a time. This was the cover story. The real experiment was already running. At some point during the discussion, one of the voices, a pre-recorded actor, began to describe a medical history of seizures. Then the voice changed. It became strained, then incoherent, then it went silent. There was a crash, and then nothing. The variable was how many people each participant believed were on the call with them. When a participant believed they were the only other person in the group, 85% of them left their cubicle and sought help within 60 seconds. Every single delay was short. The urgency was immediate. When they believed 4 other people were also on the call, and therefore also listening, only 31% took action, and those who did act waited significantly longer before moving. Nobody in this study was cruel. Nobody was indifferent. They all showed visible signs of distress, sweaty palms, flushed faces, voices that cracked when later interviewed. They were not unmoved. They were paralyzed. And the only thing that changed between the people who helped and the people who didn't was the number of others they thought were present. Darley and Latané named what they observed diffusion of responsibility. And it is not a character flaw. It is a cognitive process. Your brain, when surrounded by others, automatically recalculates the arithmetic of moral obligation. You are no longer the one person who must act. You are one of many, and the more of many there are, the smaller your individual share of the burden becomes. Divided across a crowd, responsibility becomes so diluted that no single person feels it pressing hard enough to move. But diffusion of responsibility is only half the mechanism. The other half is something Latané and Darley called pluralistic ignorance. Put yourself back on that subway platform. The man is on the ground. You are uncertain. You do not know if this is serious. You look at the faces around you to read the situation, and what do you see? Other people, also uncertain, also scanning the room, but projecting calm on the outside because that is what people do when they are waiting for someone else to define the moment. You read their apparent composure as information. They seem unbothered. So maybe this is fine. Maybe he just tripped. Maybe he is drunk. Maybe someone on the platform who knows more than you has already assessed this and decided it doesn't require action. The problem is that every single other person in that crowd is doing exactly the same thing. Each one is privately unsure and publicly projecting calm, and each one is reading the false calm of those around them as evidence that the situation isn't serious. The group is collectively convincing itself of something nobody actually believes. Everyone is lying to everyone else by accident. That is pluralistic ignorance, a shared hallucination assembled from individual uncertainty. Now combine the two effects. Diffusion of responsibility tells your brain that someone else will step up. Pluralistic ignorance tells your brain that maybe nothing needs stepping up for. Add them together, and you have a crowd that is simultaneously persuading itself there is no emergency, and distributing the duty to respond across so many people that no one's shoulder carries enough weight to act. Philip Zimbardo, the Stanford psychologist known for decades of research into situational behavior, argued that people consistently overestimate the role of individual character and underestimate the power of situation. His work kept arriving at the same uncomfortable conclusion. Put a good person into the wrong situation and they do not become villainous, they become passive. Passive is the more common outcome. Passive is what the crowd produces by default. And the situation of the crowd is one of the most powerful situational forces ever measured. This is not a flaw that lives only in subway stations and city streets. It has been documented in corporate whistleblowing, where every employee in a meeting privately agrees something is wrong but nobody speaks because everyone else is staying quiet. It appears in online pylons, where thousands of people watch someone being targeted and scroll past because the scale of the audience makes individual action feel pointless. It shows up in classrooms where a student is struggling and the teacher does not notice because the room full of other students makes everyone feel less personally responsible for pointing it out. The crowd is a machine. It generates passivity as a byproduct. And you are inside that machine every time you are in a group. Here is where the story shifts, because Darley and Latané also found the exit. When someone singled out one individual from the crowd, made direct eye contact, addressed them specifically, assigned the obligation clearly and personally, the entire mechanism collapsed. You, in the blue jacket, please call 911 right now. Not the crowd, one person. The diffusion of responsibility vanished the moment it had nowhere left to diffuse to. The designated individual's rate of helping jumped back toward the same levels as when someone was completely alone. The crowd is not apathetic. It is waiting for someone to break the loop. A single act of specificity, naming one person, assigning one task, making one pair of eyes meet yours, is enough to dismantle a system that otherwise runs on its own inertia. Now return to Kitty Genovese, because the story you were told is not quite the story that happened. Decades after the original reporting, researchers including criminologist Joseph DeMay went back to the case records. What they found was that the headline, 38 witnesses, nobody called, was significantly exaggerated. Some neighbors did call police, some shouted from their windows. The attack was not a clean, visible, uninterrupted event watched by a silent crowd. It was fragmented, confusing, partially obscured by distance and architecture. The number 38 came in part from a newspaper editor who, by his own later account, wanted a story that captured something about city life. The specific facts were stretched, but here is what makes this more important, not less. The myth spread because it felt true. It resonated with something people could feel in themselves, the memory of a moment in a crowd, when something happened and nobody moved, including you. The story was recognized not because it was accurate in every detail, but because it pointed at something real in human behavior. And that recognition is the whole point. The bystander effect is real. It does not need the Kitty Genovese case to be real. It has been reproduced in laboratories, streets, airports, online forums, workplaces, emergency rooms. The environment of the crowd, the presence of others, the diffusion of duty, the shared misreading of composure, produces passivity with such consistency that it can be graphed, predicted, replicated on demand. Your brain did not evolve in a world of strangers. It evolved in a small band, maybe 30, maybe 50 people, where everyone had a name, a role, a relationship, where the obligation to help was never anonymous because the person collapsing was never a stranger, where pluralistic ignorance could barely take hold because everyone in the group knew each other's actual emotional state. In that world, diffusion of responsibility had nowhere to hide. The group was too small and too known for it to work. The modern crowd is a recent invention, and your ancient brain has not received the update. When you step onto a platform jammed with unfamiliar faces, you are running social software built for a world of 30 people and asking it to handle a world of 8 billion. The misfit is not your failure. It is an evolutionary lag. A system that worked for hundreds of thousands of years suddenly deployed in conditions it was never designed for. So what do you do with that? The research gives a clear answer. Awareness helps, not dramatically, not perfectly, but measurably. People who know about diffusion of responsibility and pluralistic ignorance intervene at higher rates than those who don't, not because the knowledge makes them immune, but because when that pull toward waiting kicks in, they have a name for it. And naming it creates just enough distance to choose differently. The mechanism loses some of its grip when you can see it clearly. When you feel the hesitation, the looking around, the recalculation, the quiet certainty that someone else is probably already handling it, you will know what that sensation actually is. You will know it is not instinct, it is not wisdom, it is not a correct reading of the situation. It is an ancient system misfiring in a modern crowd, and a system you understand is a system you can override. You are not a bystander by nature. You are a bystander by circumstance. That is a much smaller thing, and it is a much more changeable one. This morning you woke up and moved through a world full of other people. You passed strangers on every block, stood shoulder to shoulder with people whose names you will never learn. And your brain ran its calculations, reading faces, distributing obligation, calibrating your individual share of the social contract. Most of the time nothing happened. The math never got tested. But now you know the formula. And the next time the platform fills and someone falls, you will remember, the crowd is not protection, it is a machine, and you are the one who can choose not to be a part of it.